inspired me the most, especially in those later years, is watching somebody succeed. And being a leader,
Hmm.
you're going to help them succeed. People that don't think that they can do it, and you help them to see that they can do it, and they do it, and the looks on their faces and the joy that they have.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Ronin Leadership Podcast. It's been a couple of weeks since we actually had a guest, and I'm really excited about the guest we have today, but I'll talk about it in a few minutes. But hope all of you had a great Thanksgiving, and Janice and I had a good time with our family, just kind of low key, just taking it easy, given the fact that we were so slammed the week before with F1. So I hope whatever you all did, that you had a wonderful and safe and peaceful Thanksgiving. Um, First of all, I want to thank all of you for subscribing to the channel. Latest count, we've got 1,200 subscribers to this YouTube channel. So continue to tell your friends and family about the podcast. Really appreciate your support. Thanks for your comments. As you can see on the screen, hit the subscribe button, the like button, share it, and share it with friends. Heck, share it with enemies because they probably need to know a little bit about leadership too. I've got a new book coming out. It's the sequel to Full Circle, and it's called Blood Promise. Should be out in a couple of weeks, hopefully before Christmas. And as I always say, you can go to mikehowardauthor.com. You can find any the books that I've written there. But I'm really excited about this next one, and so hope you'll all continue to support that effort. But get the shameless plug out of the way, and let's get to the main event. Um, the gentleman that I'm going to introduce you to now is a dear friend, more than a friend. Janice, I consider Phil and his wife Susan family. We've known each other for a long, long time. And when I was a baby CSO at Microsoft is when I first met Phil. And I'll let Phil talk through his story. But Phil was the president of Aronson Security Group, and they were undoubtedly the premier integrators in the security community, but much more than that. I knew nothing about what that meant when I first got into Microsoft, and Phil was and his team were instrumental in really getting me snapped in onto that side of the security world. But we'll talk about that. But more importantly, Phil has always impressed me as a kind and decent human being, and also a very great leader. And everybody's got their different leadership styles, and I've always enjoyed watching Phil and his leadership style. So, Phil Aronson, welcome to the Ronin Leadership Podcast.
Thanks, Mike. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Let me think. I got to Microsoft around 2002, so we probably met a few years after that,
Mhm.
probably, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking when you were talking, 2004, 2005. Uh-huh.
yeah. So, first of all, I guess this podcast first started off primarily with security folk, and so we all know the nomenclature, right? We know what integrators are and end users and all that good stuff. But for the uninitiated, um, I guess before you start on your journey, explain to them what your company did, what ASG did for companies like Microsoft, like for my organization.
Mhm. Um, Business was to engineer complex, large integrated security systems that would be video, voice, access control systems. And we'd engineer them, and then we engineer and design them, and then we would uh, install them or have partners install those systems, and then we would put them on the network, and make them operate and tie into global GSOCs or other, whether it's a global GSOC or whether it's a local GSOCs. We have people that would make the software work with the hardware. So
Hmm.
that's what kind of the major part of our business with large organizations was, and that changed over the years because the industry changed so much over the years. Because back in 2002, there were proprietary systems, and over that time, that from 2002 to 2018, the industry changed from proprietary systems on private networks. There were private communications, closed circuit, onto public, not only public network, but mostly private corporate networks. We put them on private corporate networks. So yeah, that's what the way we made most of our revenue. And that was for large organizations like Microsoft, like some of your Microsoft's competitors, and large hospitals, and large, did a lot of work with Amazon with their data centers. And
I don't know who they are. Who's that? What's that company?
what's the company that was the competitor of Microsoft? I don't
Yeah.
remember. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know why I said, it's just such a habit to not say names. This is the security industry, so you're not to say
Right.
names. But now I guess I'm retired, so is a statute of limitations or something like that?
Hey,
But
yeah. Well, I
but
got enough Amazon products, so I don't really care, right? So.
yeah, the Nikes and Adidas of the world, and doing work all over the world. So because if we understood that we could scale if we could design and engineer and project manage these complex systems, we didn't have to install them. And so that's why
Got it.
one of the ways we were able to grow so quickly.
Wow. So this didn't happen overnight. Uh, Tell us how, well, you've had several iterations in terms of careers, but uh, how did tell us about your journey. How did you end up running ASG? What does that
Yeah,
story look like for people?
I think it's kind of an interesting one because I started in the security business when I was 5 years old.
Yeah.
My dad started a business in the lock and door hardware business back in the 60s. And back in the 60s, that was security, security master
Hmm.
key systems, and for large organizations. And so as kids, my brothers and sisters and I, we would combine pin locks and cut keys for VA hospitals and for Fort Lewis, so we'd come home and, okay, you can go play basketball after you cut so many keys or pin so many locks.
Wow.
So I did that till I was able to get a job on my own. And then I
Mhm.
vowed never to go into the business. It was a family business, and there's some uniqueness. There is uniqueness to family businesses. And my folks were okay with that. So I kind of took a 10-year hiatus from dad's business, and worked at other businesses. I got a degree in math, and back then minor in computer science, but that was back in the days when there was no networking, and we were working at 2200 baud, and programming on cards, punch
Yeah.
cards, and so did that. And so I did. I got a degree, and then got out of college, and went into programming. Worked for Farmers New World Life in Seattle. It was a big life insurance company, and programmed for them for a few years. And we were going to move. Got an opportunity back in Portland where I went to school, and my dad says, "Hey, why don't you come back and work for me?" And so
Mhm.
that was 10 years after I had worked for him before. And we came back, and it was it was still pretty small. It was more of a lifestyle business for my mom and dad. And went to work, and I worked for my dad and mom for 6 years. So 89, that was probably 83 or 84. And worked for my mom and dad. And I worked with my dad for 6 years. And it was one of the funnest times in my work, in my journey. I didn't realize it at the time that it was going to be one of the
Mhm.
funnest times, but I look back and how much I learned during those times, and just the opportunity to work with him and get to know him a little bit, because when we were kids, he worked all the time, he traveled all the time, so
Sure.
he wasn't around that much. So we bought this little lock. My brother and I bought this little lock company in 1989 from my mom and dad, and we turned it from a kind of a small mom and pop business to a business that was owned by a family. And we grew a
Hmm.
little bit, but that business, we referred to it, it was the buggy whip business, that back in the day when cars were coming out, it was, it was going to go away. And so we started moving toward electronic security. And in 2000, we kind of had what was a tipping point, an epiphany, whatever, that block business was going away. So between 2002 and 2000 to 2002, we really tried to understand what the integration business was about. And we're trying to make this transition. And during that transition, we're kind of in no man's land between the lock business and electronic security. And it was some of the toughest times in my career of making that change, because our business had been 35 years around being a lock distributor to being electronic security. And I think during that time, I learned to be a leader, because, people are going, where are you going? And I had to explain the vision that I had to them, and why it was important, why it would be important to them, and why it was important to change. And so I can remember having office or all company meeting, which was small. We were a very small company,
Sure.
probably in 2002, we were 15 to 20 people,
Hmm.
and we just kind of what we were going to do now that we weren't in the lock business anymore. And I can remember telling him too that it's kind of like there's a boat in the dock, and we got 1 foot on the dock and 1 foot on the boat, and the boat's pulling away because that's where we're going. And so you either
Right.
get on board or get off. And so that's what's kind of the start of us being in the electronic security business.
So I want to stop you there for a second, because something intrigued me when you said that there was, whatever you call it, an epiphany or whatever you wanted to call it, from lock business to electronics, right? So there
Mhm.
was something there that you were aware of, or you could see strategically down range, like this was the future, right? I mean, did it, how did that come about? I mean,
That's an interesting question, and it was coming about because the industry was changing. But at that point in time, we had a contract with a lock manufacturer, and they terminated our contract.
mm,
So because they were going to go direct. So we had this vision of where we wanted to go, but all of a sudden it happened that we no longer had this product that we'd been selling for 35 years. They wanted to go
well,
directly to the customers. So that was a really hard thing to work through. It was very it was kind of, I always say it's one of the worst things that happened to me, but in hindsight, it was the best thing that ever happened to me.
sure,
And so those
absolutely,
are those things that you just don't see, when you're so close to it, but then you look back
right,
and just so much more chance for growth, for influence in the industry, for changing the industry, for meeting people. I'm sure we would have never met if we would have stayed there.
right.
There's so many more people I met, and so many more things we were able to do. But at that point in time, again, that leadership was going. That was when you had to explain to people, here's what the vision, here's what our vision, my vision. I want to be your vision too for what we're
Right.
making.
Did you have, I already know the answer to this, but you must have had some folks that said, I'm not buying what you're selling, because they were so
Oh,
used
oh,
to.
oh, yeah. And further along, I mean, people, when let's go 2002, when we created this vision, and we made this, we called it a scorecard or a manifesto of where we thought the security industry was going. And again, I talked about from proprietary electronic systems that are on private. I hate to use the word networks because people will think it's IP networks. They weren't. They were
Right.
running on coax and running, 485. It's a different communication protocol. That we're saying that it's going to be a commercial off the shelf. That
Mhm.
security, and you'll remember this, I think security is part of the business strategy. we started saying that in 2002, and it wasn't. We're saying security integrators, they need to know more than one product and be more than installers. They can install, but they really need to be able to engineer and design and have software people and database people that can put these systems together to make them work on the network. Because back then, putting a system on a network was rocket science, and so we hired people to do that. But people thought we were nuts, absolutely nuts, when we talked about the security being part of the business strategy. No, it's a cost of doing business, and I think you
Right.
probably went through that. In fact, that's still talked about. I was thinking about that. It's still talked about that. People are wanting to know how to explain security to their organizations as a maybe not a profit center. You turned yours into a profit center, but just so it's part of the strategic value of the company. And so we
Yeah, and
started
it's
talking those things, and nobody had ever heard of it before.
yeah, I mean, you're ahead of your time that way. Yeah, well, when I got in there, it was guns, guards, and gates, right? And that's what everyone
Yeah,
thought
yeah.
about us.
Hmm.
And as we got along, as we started moving along and, started working with folks like you and your team, I remember the things I used to tell my direct reports. If you want to hire a company to do work for us, not only do they have to be able to do the job, right? But the ones we hired were the ones like your folks that you really wanted to understand what our strategy was. So where was
Hmm.
Microsoft Global Security going to go? What was our
Hmm.
3 to 5 year plan? So how are you going to integrate with us so we
Hmm.
could all win-win? And as opposed to people just want to sell widgets. And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and it's amazing. It's funny you're saying that about because those same conversations, you're right, they're still happening. How do CSOs are still wrestling with how do I find value add? How do you
Hmm.
sell that, right? And it's for every company, it's
Hmm.
different. But the key is to tie in the overarching business strategy of
Hmm.
whatever organization you belong to, and then the
Hmm.
company. But that's pretty cool that you and your team latched on that. So as you're moving along now, and so you're heading this new direction, and you you're a smaller company at this point, but you can assume that there's going to be expansion. Are you looking at how are you looking at talent within your company, and like who's going to get you across the goal line, for wherever
Hmm.
you're trying to go?
Yeah. We really try to the idea of leave no man behind, no person behind, I guess would be a better way to say it.
Right,
But it was changing, and it was a different mindset, or different skill set, not mindset, different mindset and skill set that we needed
right.
for electronic security. And so we tried to go and find the best and the brightest to come on board. Um, and to understand the vision and where we were going. And it was sometimes easier for new people coming on to see that than the old people to see that change. They just couldn't make that change in their mind. So we looked at a different. It was whole different people, but we also thought about three things, and we call them the three V's of a vision, trying to or putting together a vision, and then getting velocity and then veracity. And so
Hmm. Hmm.
we put the vision together, and again, it was around this uh, this the how you the scorecard for the next generation integration and what that meant. Um, and so that was kind of the vision, and then the velocity, and we started growing, and people resonated with what we were saying. It was the manufacturers and some of our competitors were the ones that were kind of saying, no, that's not where it's going. But the end users really understood that. So we started
Hmm.
growing very rapidly, and we had to find people. This is a services business. This isn't a software business or manufacturing where to scale, you can scale by making more or software. It's a very different model. We needed to have engineers and installers and um, uh, more install project managers. I think we hired more
Right.
project managers and engineers than ever installers. And so to find that talent and bring them in was really important. But one of the things that I'm kind of jumping ahead to 2008, we over those 2002 to 2008, we met a company down in Portland. Its name was Selectron, and they were the best integration company. Selectron, been around for a long time, and their operations were tight, really tight.
Hmm.
We were growing like crazy, but we didn't have the operations talent to do that. So we acquired them and we merged the companies together. And that
Okay.
was another leadership challenge for us. Again, I'd never done that before. I'd never acquired a company. Um, but we had a philosophy, let's do it the best way. Because ASG acquired Selectra doesn't mean we do it ASG's way. We do it the whoever does it the best. And so it took us longer to
Hmm.
do an integration, but it was really helpful, and they helped us have that veracity. Again, we would talk a great story and people would talk about that, but we didn't have the disciplines in place until when we acquired them. Again, they had the disciplines. There's a guy, probably the best operations guy. I'm going to do a shout out for Robert Flynn, who kind of ran this Electron business, and he was he's still a really good friend today, but he really grabbed the bull by the horns and helped us have veracity around what we did. I
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
mean,
I kind of went off what the question was.
no, I mean, I love it because you think about it, early on in as ASG is moving from, your traditional business into this new world, first you have to make the leap there. You have to make the decision to make the leap there. Then you got to bring your troops along, and those folks that don't want to go along for the ride need to go by the wayside. And
Mhm,
then you integrate another company into your
mhm,
company, which is, we went through an integration with Nokia, but that was
mhm,
no, it's just different. But it's never
mhm.
easy.
No.
And there's always trepidation on the side of the people getting acquired as to what it's going to look like, at the end of the day. Are we going to be minimalized, or are they going to just want to take our IP and just get rid of all of us? And you
Mhm,
obviously managed it well, because I like that attitude. You said it was like, if they can do something better than we can, then let them run with it and do it and make us all
mhm,
successful, right? And
mhm.
it's amazing how some people just don't get that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and it was hard for us. I mean, it was hard for, in fact, the ASG people. There were some people that left over that going, well, we're the acquiring company. We should do it our way. No, but their way's better.
Yeah, yeah. I
My
always,
way. Wait, it just does common sense. The definition of insanity,
right.
doing it the same way and expect different results. So,
And then
yeah,
so, oh, go ahead, go ahead. Sorry, sorry.
no, I don't know. I don't know where I was going. I just think that, that was um, I know what I was going to say. So 2008, think about 2008. We bought them in
Yep.
2008. What happened in 2008?
It's kind of something
The
called a
bottom fell.
recession. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the bottom fell out. So that was kind of scary, but I think we both helped each other through that time. And you were talking about how we scaled up. We scaled up through buying them. But in 2008, we got a couple of very large clients. And we didn't call them
Mm-hmm.
projects, we call them clients. We got a couple large clients that were growing and building, and we got
Mm-hmm.
kind of exclusives with them. So while people were laying off some really good people, we were hiring. So we got a
Yeah.
lot of people in 2008 because we just kind of went all in. We're going to all in. We're going to go for it. We're either going to succeed or we're going to auger in. And so we really did. So that's another way to we got a lot of good talent.
Yeah, I mean, you're lucky. Timing's everything. I mean, 2008, I remember, was the first time I experienced any type of risk, that we had to take risks
Mhm,
in all of the mostly cost centers, which is never
mhm,
easy. Um, but yeah, those are, managing through those tough times, is obviously another way of, becoming a better leader, being more experienced.
mhm,
Now, for those, there's folks in that listen to this that aren't part of the security world, or if they are, they weren't part of this. So, Phil, and a great friend of both of ours named Ron Mormon, came up with an idea called the Great Conversation. And I'll let Phil talk about the Great Conversation, but I to all of you, there are a lot of you that have experienced the Great Conversation, but there are a lot of you that hadn't, and I'm sorry you didn't get a chance to experience that because at the time, especially at the time when we were attending, but it was great. So tell us about the Great Conversation. When did you guys start thinking about this, and why? What
Mhm.
was the reason behind it?
We started it probably in 2003, and it was more of a product show, and it was, people were pretty bored to go see that. And we were trying, one of our goals was to change the industry.
Right.
And so how do you change the industry? You start talking in new language. You start, having people talk about how security is part of the business strategy, and there were people that were sponges. They wanted to know about that. How did they explain it to senior management, and get a seat? We called it a seat at the table. Um, how do you do that? And so we started the great conversation around having this conversation about the issues in security, not about technical stuff. There's lots of
Mhm.
places that do that, but talk about, how do you, the security industry is so cool because everybody's risk is a little bit different. Now, some people have
Yeah.
similar risk, but one of the things I talked about is two schools side by side, and one might be a private school and one might be a public school, and their risk is different, but they're
Right.
schools. So you really have to understand the business. And so before you can determine what kind of mitigation um, techniques you're going to use. And so that's what we did at the Great Conversation, have people come and talk about the issues in security and then how the security was changing, that get a panel of people that were manufacturing going, how is it changing for you? How do you see it changing? And there was an audience interaction with that. And there were some lively conversations. We called it the Great
Mhm.
Conversation, because there were some
Yeah.
lively conversations even between audience and panel on the stage. It was pretty fun. And again,
Yeah.
that's when you came and spoke at that, and I think that's when we first met. Um,
Mhm.
but and then we had others come. We had senior leaders come. I think your boss came one time and talked about,
Yeah.
and I think he was one of the best speakers, because you had somebody explaining why security was important to an
Yeah.
organization, opposed to a security person saying that,
Right.
and he gave a great outline. I can still remember the presentation. But
Yeah.
we did that, and
Yeah.
then had people from hospitals come in and talk about their journey, and how they, raise the level. Talk about raise the tide, raise the level of security within
Yeah.
an organization, or the way it's seen. Because if you raise the tide, you're going to raise all the boats will come with you.
Yeah.
And that became, we probably had, I don't know, 50 per people to the first one. And by the time we had it for 5 years, there were probably about 250, 300 people that would come to that,
Yeah.
down at the downtown. So yeah, it was it was needed at the time. I think, and it positioned us very differently, from a business perspective, positioned us differently about how we saw security, and that we saw it as different from maybe somebody that just installs stuff, trying to
Yeah.
because
You guys definitely filled a niche. I think,
Mhm,
well, first of all, that I remember that was the first major speech I ever gave, right? And
mhm,
I
mhm.
remember that. Yeah, I remember thinking that, oh man, stage is this big, and then as the
Yeah.
years went by, the stage was still this big, but it felt smaller, because it's got more
Uh-huh.
comfortable
Uh,
speaking. But up until that time, I'd been with ISMA. For those of you who don't know ISMA, it's International Security Management Association, so global CSOs, or I'd been with as is with the CSO Roundtable. So really all just end user community, not just, but that's what it was. And from the technology side or the integrator side or whatever you want to call it, it was the great conversation was great in the sense that it brought different skill sets together to look at a common purpose, common problems, common goals. that we could all talk, we could all relate to.
Mhm.
And I hadn't seen anything like that, because there
Mhm.
used to be like, well, I don't want to talk to them. They're integrators, so I don't want to talk to them.
Yeah,
They're end users,
yeah.
they don't understand us. We don't understand them. Blah 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 blah. And you guys gave a forum
Yeah.
for everyone to speak. And yeah, I do remember the growth, and those were some of the fondest memories of seeing, bringing on Mike Mason, for instance, one time, and bringing on all these
Mhm.
people to
Mhm.
speak. And it was just a grand time, and it was sorely needed at the time too, I believe.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, it was at the right time, and bringing in some speakers. And there was a tipping point in that because, there was nobody ever did anything like nobody had ever done anything. ISMA is different because there really are no vendors. It's mostly end users, although there's a few
Right.
vendors, but not, this was trying to bring the vendor community, the end user community, consultant community, all together. And there was a tipping point in that people thought it was an expo. Oh, we're going to sell you stuff,
Oh, right,
and
right, right,
and
right.
yeah, and it wasn't. It took a few years to for people to realize that no, this is a security event. This is we're going to learn about security and learn about risk and how to mitigate risk, and again, the language was way different, but it took a few years to do that. But I remember we talked about 3 or 4 years after we were 3 or 4 years into it. You could just see there was a different vibe there. And people came
Mhm.
and saw each, maybe they'd see each other once a year, that
Yes.
were in the end user community that would do that, and became friends through that event. So yeah, it was fun. It created it was a lot of work. Ron Warman just grabbed that and ran with it, and some other people that put that together. It was fun, and that stage was sure big the first couple times for me too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think we both grew together in terms of our ability to speak in front of the public and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
over the years. And that was, for me and you, that was obviously a start. Um,
Mhm.
but as so you're progressing along with your company, company's growing, doing very well. Um, from a leadership perspective, I guess the two questions, twofold questions. Number one, how do you describe yourself as a leader? What kind of leader are you, if you look at yourself? And then, um, what are you looking for in people that you're uh, thinking about moving into leadership positions, besides their technical talent or whatever expertise they have?
Yeah, yeah. Instead of me describing what kind of the leader I was, I kind of look at what people maybe said about my leadership style. When they, whether I'd ask or they just tell me, and I think probably servant leader
Hmm.
was something that just kind of came naturally to me. That I'm not a rah
Hmm.
rah, let's take the hill, and I think it's interesting. Some people want that, but other people don't. And so I think that
Yeah.
servant leadership, I think I was a pragmatic. People call me very pragmatic. So pragmatic about what made sense,
Hmm.
what we're going to do, how to motivate people pragmatically, not being fake, being real.
Right.
So I call it pragmatic. And I think the persevering. I think the other thing is this was not a sprint. We talked about that a lot at our general staff meetings and our EMT meetings, executive management team meetings, that this is a
Hmm.
marathon, and so we got to remember as we're going on this marathon, remember when we're in the 17th mile that we've gone 17 miles, we got ways, but we still have ways to go.
Right.
Um, and so we just need to keep on going and going. And I used to talk about you can only go as far as you can see, and then you get over the rise and you can see farther and go further. Well, we didn't see the end point 15 years, in 2002, but we went further and got better, and then went further and got better, and went further and got better. And so there was this marathon we went through. So I think this persevering and just in keeping people on board. And people talked about the vision, and a friend of mine talked about, you Philip, you say it and you say it and you say it again.
Yep.
And when you're sick of saying it, you say it again. And to this day, I still talk to a lot of people from ASG, and they still know what the vision is, because again, and you say it enough, and people believe it. It becomes a culture,
Yeah.
and so to talk about the vision, the ASG way, the values of the company, the mission of the company. Again, those are things that people latch onto and grow with. So that's the first question. I don't know if you have any questions about that, but what was the second question? Oh,
Just
people.
well, I'll make a comment on the first one. You hit the nail on the head. I had a conversation with somebody about this a couple of days ago. But you're right. I remember reading a book by Jack Welch way back in the day,
Mhm,
and when he took over GE and it was bloated, and they used to
mhm,
call him Neutron Jack, right? Because he had to cut a lot of fat out. But he had a vision, and he rammed it down everybody's throats over and over and over and over again until they got, like you said it. You get sick of hearing
mhm,
about it, but nobody can ever say that they don't know what the vision is. And it's cool that you say
mhm,
even to today,
mhm.
people know. Just like we used to say
Yeah,
strategic integration, right? And global security. And they
right.
just rammed it through everyone because we wanted a mantra and this was our goal. So I'm glad you mentioned it. The second half of the question was, like, you're looking at top talent. You're looking, you need great leaders working for you to drive your strategic vision, right? And your goals. I mean, what are you looking for in people, for leaders?
I look for um, integrity. I think is one of the key things I look for in people. I look for people that were self-motivated. I'm not a rah-rah leader. So I'm not going to,
Mhm.
hey, let's go. I'm going to go, we're going to take the hill. It may take us, a day, it may take us a month. It doesn't matter. We're going to take it, and we'll go. It's not a rah-rah thing. So I look for
Mhm.
people that were self-motivated, and that could see problems and work on problems where, they didn't need to be told what to do. I think the other thing
Mhm.
about leadership is, we talked about this a lot, was that leadership isn't positional. Yeah, you have your senior leaders, but you have leaders all within your company, and leaders are the people that have integrity, that understand the vision. And so whether you
Mhm.
have a installer, service person, engineer, those people are leaders too, and we see leadership in those. They don't have to be the CFO or chief sales officer to be a leader in the company. They
Mhm.
can be the person that,
Right.
when there's water cooler talk, they go, we just don't do that around here. So it's building that
Mhm.
culture of leadership, I think, is one of the key things. So I think, even I really hadn't thought about this before, but when we hired people, we were looking for people with leadership characteristics. That didn't mean they were going to be managers,
Sure.
but they had certain values, within them, not only technical knowledge, but values within them. And those people became leaders. There's a lot, integrity, doing, I just completely lost it. Is what do you do when nobody's watching, or you think nobody's
Yeah.
watching, with
Right.
cameras everywhere and no privacy, it's now what you think, but what people
Yeah.
do. And we looked for people that had that integrity, and we talked about it a lot, because people worked on their own. There were project managers working from their homes, there were engineers working from their homes, they were out in the field on job sites for weeks on end, so it wasn't like they were people were managing them day to day.
Right. Yeah. I know you're 100% correct. But now, so you have these, highly
Let, let me let
motivated.
me let me
Oh, go
add, let
ahead.
me
Go
add
ahead.
one more. Let me add one.
Yeah, sure, sure,
People
sure,
that
sure.
people that didn't see the world the way I saw it.
Okay.
I wanted people with different ideas. I wanted to have
Mhm.
fierce conversations with my executive team, Yeah, and we
Yeah.
did have fierce conversations with almost everybody on. I had, you know, where we were arguing points, not arguing values, arguing points. They saw it different than
Mhm.
I did. And I really valued that because they see things that I didn't see. And
Mhm.
so I'd want to know that, because if they saw it, maybe it was an issue that we needed to solve, or before we maybe went out on a new endeavor, they saw those things. Well, let's look at the risk on that and how we can mitigate for that, opposed to somebody who's saying, oh yeah, you say so, Phil, let's go do it. I didn't want those people. I wanted those people. And now it took a little bit longer to have some of those conversations, but you talk about my executive management team, ask them about the fierce conversations we had with just me and them, or within our executive management team. You had to be a strong personality to kind of fit, and I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that. I don't know whether it's tension or the just the um, I don't know what the word would be. You know, just the push and pull of that. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, you said it, fierce conversations. Your experience might have been different from mine. With my team, initially, they would fight, but they would fight fair. It got personal,
Mhm,
and we ended
mhm,
up having to do some emotional intelligence training to everybody learn to play
mhm,
well in the sandbox. And then it got good. Fine, we can have those conversations, but everybody
mhm,
getting pissed off at each other personally, right? I don't like your
mhm,
position or I disagree with your strategy, but that doesn't
mhm,
mean we can't be colleagues and figure it out, right?
mhm,
Um, I assume you probably had some times throughout your career where you had
mhm,
to manage disputes between some of your direct
mhm. Oh
reports.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, the stories I could tell. Stories, and I can remember you and I having conversations about that. You know, a lot of our conversations was about leadership, and I think a mentor to me, of how to deal with some of the the to manage some of those relationships, knowing that everybody wants the outcome the same. They're just a different way to get there. And so how do
Exactly.
they do that in a more civil way? And I was thinking, where I learned that from was my dad. Those 6 years with my
Hmm,
dad. He and I used
right.
to argue like crazy. Argue, and then it was like, we'd be in the middle of an argument. It was about noon, going, you hungry? Yeah, I'm hungry. Let's go eat. And so we'd go eat, and then we'd come back and we'd start having these fierce conversations. And it wasn't you didn't take it with you, that you're just trying to figure out what the best solution is, to some issues. So I think that
Yeah,
was
yeah.
one of the things that was important to my leadership team.
Yeah, so now, later on in your career, you're retired now, but before you retired, you ended up, in a bit of a transition, right?
Mhm,
From another transition point in your life, from
mhm,
ASG to another company. Tell us about that.
mm. Wow. Um, yeah, that was when we sold to ADT in 2018. I'm gonna go back a little bit. 2017, we met with them, and there was a fellow that's still there, Dan Bressing, who's the CEO of the new company Everon, um, because they broke off from ADT. But we were not looking to sell, and we went and visited them in Chicago, and Dan actually told us a great story. It was a lot about the strategy and what he wanted to build and what ADT wanted to build in the commercial part. The most of it is residential, but in the commercial part.
Right.
And we were kind of, wow, this is pretty cool, because we were at an inflection point too at that point. Because when you grow, you don't grow like this. You grow kind of like this, and
Hmm.
so we were going to be one of those. We kind of were done here, and in order to get to that next level, we were going to have to invest quite a bit to make the company to be able to scale to the next level, because we were about, I think, 175 people at that point in time in
Okay. Wow.
2017. So we went from, yeah, um, and um, and so we knew that again, lots of investment. I was 60 years old, 59 years old, I think, at that point.
Mm,
And whether I had, and it'd be another 5 years before we kind of had that other where we're going to start growing, we felt, 3, 4 years. And so when they came and they were looking to grow, looking, had some solutions to some of the things that we needed, it just made sense. It really made sense. And then we were looking something that would be valuable to, or that would help not only the owners but be good for the employees. And again, some of our
mm,
employees were looking for new things too, new things to do. I was kind of looking for, okay, we can keep on doing this, or what's something new, and to be able to scale. So we made that transition in January of 2018, and I worked for Dan Bressingham, which was different. I hadn't worked for anybody since 1989.
right.
I actually told him that I might be the worst employee he's ever had, because I just had never worked for anybody. And so I did that, and it was challenging and fun to do that. I learned a lot. I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to work at a multi-billion-dollar company, because I didn't understand. I didn't understand how the scale of what this it took to change.
Mhm.
In a 175 person company, you can change a lot quicker than a 5,000 person company, and you understand that. I didn't understand that, at the point time. So
Right.
I learned that, and it was a really great learning experience for me, at that point in my career, and
Mm,
again, I'm grateful for that. But then, and so I was the, I don't even know what the titles were that I had, but they were trying to integrate ASG into it, and then I took on a more of a global senior role for them for a while, and then COVID hit, and
mhm,
when
mhm.
COVID hit, that changed everything. And it just it wasn't nearly as fun. It wasn't fun for anybody, but it was for me. It was the relationships mattered, and being around people mattered, and not being able to have that was a tough thing. So I went into a consulting role for them for about a year and a half, and then retired in January 2022. So I don't know. I kind of, maybe I didn't answer, well, what was it like? It was challenging, it was different. Um, um, and but I'm glad I did it. Really glad I did it.
Yeah, yeah, it was a great way to cap off,
Oh,
your career, which has been, as we've talked about, it's quite a journey. Now, along the way, every time when you're a leader, there'll be a lot of times of stress. Just it is because of the territory. So, how did you handle stress? I mean, some people meditate, some people whatever, I mean, how, some
yeah.
people have, private jets like you do and fly around, but how,
By the way, that is not true. That is not true.
but so
Oh,
because it's also different because for most of your career, it was your company. I mean, you're an entrepreneur. It's your company, your name on it. And
mhm.
so I suspect, you know, you have to have a little bit of a closer, you feel closer, I think, more passionately. We're all passionate about our jobs, I think, hopefully. But
Mhm,
you
mhm.
obviously, so how do you deal with stress? And what did you do?
Uh, I think a number of things. The power of prayer is amazing when it comes to stress,
Mm,
and the grace of
mm,
God is amazing through stress.
mm.
Um, I have an amazing wife and kids, um,
Yep,
that helped with the stress, and we did stuff. I worked 16 hours a day during the week, but on weekends I tried to shut down. Um,
good,
I
good.
I have hobbies. I didn't get a chance to do them very much when I was working, but I love to fly fish, and
Hmm.
fly fishing. I can go fly fishing and not think about work one bit, because you got to
Really?
concentrate on what you're doing. With golf, I can
Mm-hmm.
be standing over a 5 foot birdie putt, which happens once every 2 years, and I'm thinking
Right.
about a contract that I need to sign or something. It just doesn't do the same thing. And
Interesting.
I have other hobbies too that
Yeah.
I enjoy. And so retirement hasn't been. We're busier than we ever have. We have 4 grandkids,
Yeah.
uh, and we're doing that. But it was stressful in that when you go on vacation, and when you're an owner of a company, at least this was for me. You go on a week vacation. It took maybe 4 days to relax, to forget about what's going on at work. And so
Yeah.
then you have maybe 2 days or 2.5 days, and then you start thinking about all the stuff you put off before you went on vacation that you got to do when you get
Right.
back. So a 7 day
Right.
vacation would be about a 2 day vacation. And I never took more than a 10 days, like a week and a half off for 25 years. I don't think,
Right.
yeah, maybe 20 years. And so didn't get those long vacations. So it is stressful, but again, and surround yourself with really good people. I think that's the other thing that's stressful. The energy of I talked to hit on this a little bit during COVID, but I get energy from being at work and going in Monday mornings. I wasn't let's go to work Monday morning. By Monday noon, I was fired up and ready to go because I'm seeing the people, meeting the people. That would get me fired up. And on Friday night, I was calling people at 7:30 at 8 o'clock because I was ready to go on Friday nights, and everybody else would like,
Wow.
"What are you calling me tonight? What are you calling me on Friday night?" But I'd
Yeah.
be fired up, and then kind of the next week. But that's kind of again the way I handle stress and was trying to find those different things to
Yeah.
do.
No, yeah, I'm
How
glad
did how did
you
you how
talked.
did you handle how did you handle stress? Can I
A
interview
lot
you?
of the same things you talked about, obviously prayer and Janice, of course, before Janice, Karen. Exercise was my relief. When I'm working out, I don't think about work. I
Mhm.
think about how painful it is or whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah.
And I tried. I think a big part of that was also at some point when you have a great team and you can go on vacation and well, yes, one year is always towards the company. You can kind of unwind
Mhm.
a little bit more. A lot of my stress always self-imposed though. I always
Mhm.
joke I get it from my mom because she worried about everything. And she probably
Yeah.
passed that trait on to me. So I worry about everything, and even like making speeches. Every time I made a speech, I'd always ask, Brian, or I'd ask Foynes or whoever, "Hey, was it okay?" And this is like 10 years in. Yeah, boss, it's fine. You're
Yeah,
doing
yeah, yeah,
fine. But I
yeah,
needed
yeah.
that validation because I always put too much stress on myself,
Uh-huh.
which can be a good thing, but it can also be a bad thing too. So I've been
Mhm.
I've been trying to do a lot more. I studied besides the Bible, obviously is number one. I've been doing a lot of work in the last years in my job on stoicism, and
Mhm.
just
Mhm.
being present and understanding how wonderful it is to be here right now, like what we're doing
Mhm.
right now.
Mhm.
And maybe when we finish, there'll be something stressful in the email, but right now I'm enjoying this and I can enjoy today because tomorrow's
Mhm.
not given. And that's
Mhm.
one way to
Mhm.
mitigate stress. Because why would you, if tomorrow's your last day, if everybody knew tomorrow was their last day, you think they'd be stressed out about anything?
Mhm. Mhm.
No,
Mhm.
they'd probably spend as much time with family, try to do something
Mhm.
fun, right? As
Mhm.
opposed to worry about, paying bills or whatever.
Mhm.
So,
That's re-
but yeah, I think,
that's really
sorry.
that's really wise about being in the present. I think that's so true that from a retirement perspective, being in the present. People ask, "What do you do?" And I'm going, whatever things I like to do. Being in present and enjoy things I enjoy, and maybe not doing the things I don't enjoy. That's one of the advantages you have, kind of being retired, is do the stuff that's fun with people you like doing it with. And so I think there's something to that, just being in the present. I think that's good. That's good advice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I just got my last question because I found this fascinating. I've learned some things actually. I've known you forever. I've learned some things about you and your growth and your journey. Um, Leadership is hard. I don't care how you slice it, it's hard. Um, and you've run into people that are leaders, but they're for the wrong reasons. Like you said, you want the corner office, you want the title, you want the money. Okay, that's great. Uh, but I think, in my personal opinion, today's business environment is even tougher than when you and I were in. It's just there's a lot of things going on. It's faster paced. There's just change is happening, every 2 seconds. Um, why would somebody want to be a leader in today's environment? If you could encourage somebody that was on the fence about, can I stay an individual contributor? Because I've run into those. I love being an investigator. You're a great investigator, but man, you'd be great as a leader because you care about people and you have strategic vision. I don't know. I don't want to do that. Okay, and that would be fine. There's nothing wrong with that, right? But what would you say to somebody that was on the fence?
It's kind of what you get, and you talk about it in I think maybe in one of your books. I remember specifically about how your leadership journey changes, and you become from an individual contributor and thinking about your career to thinking about other people's career. And the thing that inspired me the most, especially in those later years, is watching somebody succeed. And being a leader, you're going
Hmm.
to help them succeed. People that don't think that they can do it, and you help them to see that they can do it, and they do it, and the looks on their faces and the joy that they have of,
Yeah,
boy, you saw it in me, but I didn't see it in me, is what, they tell you. I think that is, you, unless you're a leader, you don't get to see that, and
yeah,
just to know that's there. I think that's the opposite of that, though, is one of the hardest things as a leader, is to have those people that really want it, maybe want it for the wrong reasons, and just are not able to do it. And so they they see it, which might be better than if they don't see it and you see it. And
right.
that's some of the toughest times, but it's so worthwhile. And that's what I'd say. If you enjoy seeing and helping people succeed,
Mhm.
that's a great reason, I think, to be a leader, because you can have influence over so many people, more than, and it's not a control. It's not, leadership isn't control. It's influence.
Right,
And I
right.
and I think the first time I heard that, who was the your counterpart on the IT side at Microsoft?
Oh, Brett
Uh,
Arsenault.
Ben Arsenault. We are sitting at a
Yeah.
table, at a great conversation, because he was going to speak, and he talked about control versus influence, and just that idea that, as a leader, you influence, you don't control people. You manage, you control, but as a leader,
Right.
and the influence you have over people. And I remember that I really thought about that a lot, and again, that was back in 2008 or 9 or 10 or something like that. It
Yeah,
really
that's right.
changed. It really changed my thinking process on that. So,
That's
and
good.
that's
I'm
what
glad.
that's what I would say. That's what I would
Yeah.
say. Yeah. How about you?
Well,
I'm,
that's
I'm
awesome.
curious what you would say to that. Why would somebody be a leader?
I would, well, what I would tell them is that the one time that I gave up being a leader when I was at CIA, I'd led for years, and I went to what they call Inspector General's office. So that's the
Hmm.
fraud, waste, and abuse. Every government agent has an IG, and we work with the FBI and do that kind of stuff. But our boss was okay, but he was no leader, and I had no influence to change anything, even though I could see if we did this, this, and this, the morale would be better, or our methodologies would be better, or what have you. But it was an epiphany, to use that word again, that I realized unless I put myself in the position of being a leader again, I can't have influence. And you mentioned that too, right? And so to me, I would rather, deal with whatever headaches come with being a leader, and there are many, and sometimes sleepless nights or what have you, or difficult conversations like you alluded to,
Hmm.
but still be able to influence people, careers, strategies, and ultimately, like you said, the ultimate goal is when you see those folks that you were leading now taking over organizations. That's cool, right? And you
Mhm,
had a piece of that. Yeah, they
mhm,
they they had to drive it, they had to do
mhm,
it, but you had a
mhm,
piece of that. And yeah, there's there's always there's always also a bit of ego when it comes to being a leader, but you have to have a
mhm,
healthy ego,
mhm,
not the unhealthy one, but you need to have a healthy ego. And but yeah, that's what I would tell people. Like, and again, I had conversations with folks that, in my organization that like, I just love being an investigator, or I just love doing crisis management. I just love it, and I could see it in their eyes. They're, you got it,
mhm,
fine.
mhm.
Then do your 20
And
or whatever and just do that. But you would see some people that had, like you talked about, they had doubts. I don't know if I could do it. Well, none of us
mhm,
know we could do it until we actually do it, right?
mhm,
And you're
mhm,
gonna you're
mhm,
gonna step on it. You're gonna make mistakes, but you will
mhm,
learn along the way, and you'll be better off as a
mhm,
leader. So
mhm,
that's what I would tell people.
mhm, mhm, mhm. Yeah, no, I agree. Total agree. And you can learn, I think you said you can learn to be a leader if you have certain characteristics, and people lead different ways. I really think people, there's so many different kinds of leaders, and I think
Oh
you need
yeah,
to find your own way and not try to be somebody else. Be comfortable in
yeah,
your own skin of leadership, and it doesn't have to be one way. So I think you're right.
yeah. Have to have your own niche. Um, well, Phil, thanks a lot for really thank you for taking the time to walk through your career, walk through your life. Kind of what makes you tick, and you've had such an interesting career. And when you mentioned mentor, I I have the same feeling for you. A lot of things I've learned from you over the years, from a leadership perspective, just watching your style and how you deal with people and situations that, where, someone like me would, my head would have blown off. You have a very calm and present demeanor about you, and that
Well,
I could,
Mhm. Yeah,
go ahead.
yeah. I think only a few people know about my I get angry too. It's not always calm, but you have to know me well to be able to see that. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I stay away from you when I see that face anyway. Well, thank you again
Yeah.
for taking the
Yep.
time.
Thank.
Best to
Yeah.
Susan and the kids. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Mike, for having me. I love what you're doing here. I love what you've done in your retirement, and what the writing of the books, and the continued writing and your podcast. You're great success in that, and had a vision, and this is what you want to do, and you did it. And you were a great friend, and Janice too, and wish you all the best, and look forward to our next conversation.
Thank you, amigo. Um, so that's it for today's edition of the Rona Leadership Podcast. This is a wonderful conversation, a great conversation, and I'm
Okay.
glad we were able to have this. Um, uh, so once again, for all of you who are listening in, um, continue to provide comments, and also if you have people that you want me to interview that they don't have to have anything to do with the security world, but just on leadership or what have you, let me know. We've done some podcasts recently that they'll be coming up soon, and they're a little bit different, and we're going to try to jazz things up a little bit. But continue to hit the subscribe button, the like button, share button, and then we'll just we'll be back at you very soon with another edition of the Rona Leadership Podcast. Thank you so much for your support.